like, not that I would want this to happen, but in the case of a conceivable war between two major powers, I always envision one of the first things that happens is all the satellites are destroyed.
Start it up. Let's get it rolling. Big ideas, money folding. Hustle smart, dream so wide. Turn that grind into a joyride.
So today we are talking about data centers in space.
Ooh, cool.
Do you remember that reference? Why I said it like that?
No.
Okay. Do you remember the Muppet Show when we were kids?
Oh yeah, I like vaguely. I was a little young.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know the skit from the Muppet Show I'm talking about?
No.
Pigs in space.
I vaguely remember the
remember
voice.
that?
I remember the voice. I don't know like the bit at all.
Oh man, yeah. Anyways, I have great memories of pigs in space as a kid watching the Muppet Show.
Well, see, if you're a kid, I'm probably not alive.
Like, it was,
how old were you?
Oh, I would have been really. I think it actually.
If it's sub 10, I'm not alive.
Oh yeah, it's definitely
okay.
Sub 10.
So
you wouldn't have been around. For
yeah,
it,
there you go.
Maybe reruns. I don't know.
What the hell's the point?
Yeah, but it was like pigs in space. So it was like these pigs. It was like Star Trek, but like with pigs. And Miss Piggy was like the first officer.
Oh, cool.
Anyways,
was Kermit the Kirk?
Yeah.
Or was it Picard?
No, it was another one. It was, I forget his name. It was like a non-regular character from the Muppet Show that would do the captain. Yeah. Anyways, I watched a few on YouTube. Not the most like politically correct.
It's weird. Like those don't age
anymore.
well at all.
I know.
It doesn't even seem funny. Like it's weird. Right?
I thought they were funny, but they're
nostalgically, you probably thought it was
like you'd
funny.
never let your kids watch them because they're.
I don't think it was meant for kids, really.
Yeah, there was one I was watching, and it was like, oh, we have to like correct course, and Miss Piggy, you're gonna press the button, and literally the captain guy is like, oh, you're a girl. Are you going to be able to, and,
can't do that anymore.
And then the guy's like, actually, she's a pig.
Well, she's a girl pig, to be fair. Yeah.
But still, I was like, oh, that's at the top.
Yeah, that's a little weird.
Yeah, anyways, so didn't age well. So anyways, data centers in space.
It's a huge explanation for that bit.
Sorry.
Okay.
All right. So you kind of know the background of this, okay? So actually, Elon's kind of the one behind this, wants to put data centers in space. So like
everybody was talking about this in like late December, I feel like.
Yeah.
It was, all of a sudden it came out of nowhere. Everybody's like, oh, we're going to have data centers in space now.
Right. So the idea, though, is pretty straightforward. Like if you think about the tech. So you've got the sun. So you've got like a whole bunch of
basically unlimited energy and unlimited cooling.
Yeah, right? Exactly. And then the cooling, because you're in the vacuum of space. You're just radiating heat out into space, and that costs you almost nothing. Whereas like cooling and power are the two big.
I read something that like, Microsoft made this big pledge to reduce its environmental impact, like probably like 10 years ago or something like that.
Yep.
And now with all the AI stuff they're doing, it's like, actually, we're going to be going up like 30% a year. Like it's like totally backflipping because they're like, we need to cool this stuff.
Yeah,
all these data centers.
You know what's actually interesting on the economics of space-based data centers is that launch to launch something into orbit.
Yeah, that's a big question.
The costs have gone down 90% in the last decade.
Is that because of SpaceX and like
I think so.
landable rockets and such?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's kind of
so like I guess my question, like data centers are really big. Okay, so I have a bunch of things about this,
right?
A bunch of initial thoughts. I don't know if you want to give more context, but
do you want me to give more background and then you can kind of go into all your bunch of thoughts, or because I can just sort of set your table here.
All right, fine.
Okay, so let me give you another couple of tidbits. So there are a few challenges. So one of the things is latency, because you have to send the signals up to space and
going
back.
to space.
So you're looking at about 40 to 550 millisecond latency from low Earth orbit to ground, and on ground it's more like 10 to 50 milliseconds, so it's significantly more latency. So I don't know if you're going to be able to do like real-time gaming with this sort of stuff. Like, so it may be limited in the way that it can think. There is the risk of some random piece of space debris.
So you're already getting into analysis. So I'm
just giving.
Let me in. I'm dying.
Hold on. I have a question for you, because I'm gonna set the stage for this, because I've actually prepped for this episode rather than whatever.
ChatGPT prep.
So my question for you here, let's just do kind of like the broad-based question. Is moving data centers to space actually solving a real problem? Or is this a solution looking for a problem? Like understanding some of those limitations. Is this one of those times where we're like, this isn't actually a problem? We can just keep building these things on Earth And we don't have to go through all the
this is a real problem. I do think this is my take is this is a real problem because the environmental impact of these data centers is so significant. The power required for them, the cooling required for them, which we alluded to, the space, the like all these different things. Like there's huge needs here. I think but this isn't the only way you can solve this problem. This is one way you could optionally try to solve this problem. It makes sense in the context that the cooling is there and the power is there. Latency is another good point. But yeah, my thing is kind of like, what if it gets hit by space crap and then it's like destroyed? And what about like, it's like things like little tiny rocks going around in orbit are going like bullets.
What's that movie? I think it was Sandra Bullock was in it. Where they're up on the space
George
thing.
Clooney.
Yeah, George Clooney.
Gravity?
Yeah,
I think it's called Gravity.
Yeah.
The Russians blew up something and then all of a sudden makes this like huge like space shitstorm that's going around, and they keep getting hit by it every couple of minutes or like or an hour or whatever.
Exactly.
But like, that is another thing. The other thing I'm like, well, so I don't know the answers to this, to be fair, but the size of like the storage required is significant. Yeah. That's why we're building all these data centers in the first place. Like, so we can send stuff up by a rocket. The cost still reduced by 90%, but that cost could still be really big. And then when it's up there, like how much like processing power am I getting up there? You know what I mean? How much storage am I getting up there? Right. What about data sovereignty in space?
Okay, all right.
I have so many good questions.
You're ripping through all of my questions way too fast. Okay, so can I give you a little tidbit? Let's just talk, first of all, a little bit about the electrical consumption. Okay. So data centers right now are using 1 to 2% of global electricity. It's expected to triple by 2030.
Yeah, definitely.
So they're a big consumer of that. What's really interesting is what percentage of the electricity usage is for cooling only?
Oh, I have no idea.
40%.
Okay, like almost half of it.
Yeah.
But it was the 60% is to
run the processors and all that sort of stuff. So if you think of, okay, when you're up in space, you only need 60% of the power that you had before.
Well, or let's just stay on Earth for a second. If you could solve cooling more efficiently, you could save 40% of the energy cost required.
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting too.
Right.
So I don't know, if there's somebody listening today and you think about how to innovate on these data centers, then it's kind of like a function of how can you cool them without using so much power. That might be kind of interesting too.
What about just like burying them in the ground or putting them in the Arctic? Or, what about, is there a more
bears? I don't know. No, but like that's
chewing on the power cables.
Well, I think like it's a like we can't just like build anywhere. Like that would be really hard to build in the Arctic. That's why like not that much gets built in the Arctic.
But how hard is it to build in space?
I don't know. There's some reason space kind of feels easier because I don't know why, but it feels like you get the stuff up there and then it's kind of like up there and it's hanging out, right? Whereas to move the amount of material you would need to like the Arctic, like I don't know. I have no idea, to be honest. Like I'm definitely not an expert on this, but I would say that like it kind of just feels like space might be easier because the rockets can land and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Gotta think you can run a big, massive fiber optic cable up to the Arctic, and like
they might already be there because there are military bases in the Arctic, right?
Yeah,
there's like alert and stuff like that.
Yeah. So what about just like
could you
putting
just
it
do
somewhere
something
really cold on Earth?
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
All right.
Like
All right, we solved it.
Literally, okay, done.
Anyways, okay.
I sold my business for $40 million, and I want you to steal my ideas. Check out my book, Startup Different, on Amazon, Audible, and Kindle.
Second thing I want to ask you, okay? So this is getting on to what you touched on earlier. This is probably the big elephant in the room, I think, actually, in this whole idea. Because we're always worried about, especially us having run a Canadian company, the data sovereignty piece was always a really big deal. People wanted to know where the data was being housed, GDPR, all that sort of stuff was like a huge deal.
Those all kind of work differently too, but
yeah. But it was definitely an issue we had to deal with every single sales cycle that we did. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the elephant in the room. So what now? When you've got satellites, they're kind of like over different countries briefly, and they're over like every country briefly. Because they're moving around the Earth.
Well, that doesn't matter. That's not how that works. Like there are certain. Well, I don't know. Maybe
I believe they orbit is
orbit's important, but you own airspace, but you don't own airspace to outer space. Like, it's not like
that is a good question. I have
above
no
Canada. No, that's not a question. It's an accurate statement, right? Like, you don't own, Canada doesn't own the space above us at any given time. We own airspace up to probably a certain altitude,
right?
But like once you cross into like we have no gravity anymore, that's like outer space, and that's not owned by anybody. The comparable might be here, like international waters. Okay, so you have like every country has, I think, a right to 3 miles or 5 miles or 10 miles nautical miles off the coast of their nation is their waters,
right?
And then international waters is sort of beyond that. So the way I think about space is it's for the most part, at least before Space Force would have been made, I would have said to you, this is like international waters. It's like open area that anyone can use and has probably international governing law.
So you would treat space as like international waters.
Yeah. But some of those, so going back to data sovereignty specifically, and I know this is an incredibly exciting conversation for the listeners, but so if it's GDPR, then the way that works is like European data has to be handled differently in any data set that it's in. So if it's in a Canadian data center, but it's a European person, you have to like handle their data differently.
Oh, so it's actually where the users,
yeah, exactly. And but for Canada, it's like all the Canadian data has to live in Canada. The United States, all the US data has to live in like US data centers.
Right.
But like, I don't know how that works.
All right, let me ask you this question.
Perhaps it's an ownership question. Does an American company own the servers?
Right.
Or does a Canadian company, or does a Chinese company?
I feel like governments would leverage, if they wanted the data, they would leverage whatever angle they needed to get it.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, that's probably what the pathway would be there logically if you had them in space.
So
data centers.
Flip this a little bit on its end. You did a ton of enterprise sales and you had to deal with data sovereignty questions all the time.
Yeah.
And we could say, hey, it's in this Microsoft data center, or this Microsoft data, whether it's in Canada, US, or elsewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty straightforward. So if you're in a sales cycle and you get an IT person who's concerned about data sovereignty and you have to say to them, oh, yes, we're using a space data center. So your data is like either in international waters of space or it's like briefly over almost every country in the world at some point. What do you think that like IT person is going to do next? They're going to take their glasses off and they're going to start.
Yeah. There were some guys at Rave used to do that. They were just like, yeah, but again, I don't think that matters. That okay, it's not a fucking spy plane. It's not a spy satellite that's like looking down at like Russia or Ukraine or US or China. It's not like that.
Okay.
It's at a higher atmosphere, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Like at any rate, it's like a private company putting up a space station is the way I would think about it, as opposed to this like government action. And it again, it doesn't have any, I don't think it matters. You would say it's in orbit. I'd say it's in a space data center and it has lots, it's up in we work with this company. This company has these certifications, and then you get through it. And then like ultimately, like if there's like a realistic, like a pragmatic part of this, which is like, can the IT guy check the boxes?
Right.
Then there's another part of it, like what's actually happening.
See, that's the thing. The box for it's in space is not on the criteria for them. Okay. Which means that then they're going to like rub their eyes and then they're going to say, oh, we're going to have to get like legal.
Yes, 100%. This would be illegal.
Something like that.
Well,
and then you're like, oh, great. Why did we?
Then they'll probably actually, you know what they would do is legal will then say your data is subject to US laws on data sovereignty. And that's what they'll probably push, even if the data center's in space.
Yeah.
So maybe there's like an extrapolation of law.
It's just
if you're a lawyer, call into the show now.
You know, though, if you go to them and say, oh, it's in Azure US East, data center, they can just go check.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I remember
versus if you're in space, that's a very complicated, it's not just a check. It's a very complicated.
Look, I don't think that you're right, but I think going back to the root of this is not like these space data centers are not about, oh, is this easier for IT people or not? This is like, is there a way to do this that doesn't require us to reopen coal plants or to figure out fusion power or to like use 30% more water per year?
There's probably a pitch on that side that would really appeal to some clients where you could say, look,
I think
this is like zero, all renewables, super low impact on anything.
And maybe what they do is they put the data center in space in basically like a giant tank. So that way, if it does get hit by an asteroid or some space crap, it is more resilient.
Okay, so actually, that's kind of where I'm going with the next question on this. So thinking about space debris, yeah, collision. So and collision risks. Okay, so just like out of that Sandra Bullock, movie, what if that happens? And your data is sitting on that server that's up there.
So the thing is, you're toast. So the maybe you have a redundancy on an on-Earth data center. You could see that too, or on the moon or something.
Doesn't that defeat the point of the
totally? You'd more than double your cause. But well, I don't know. I'm just saying. Well, here's the other thing too. Not that I would want this to happen, but in the case of a conceivable war between two major powers, I always envision one of the first things that happens is all the satellites are destroyed.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's the major form of communication for the U.S. military, for every person or whatever. Like the internet, more or less that part of the internet, part of those services, that all dies. I think right away. In a major conflict.
And I don't even think and
that makes a shitstorm up there.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think when SpaceX started launching the Starlink satellites, they would launch them in constellations. They would call them a group,
a whole bunch of them.
They would launch a whole bunch at the same time. And I think that was for redundancy, so that if one got knocked,
and also cost efficiency, probably.
Yeah. Do you remember hearing that astronomers really hated the Starlink satellites because they were shiny or something like that, and so they'd be pointing their telescope to the the skies, and you could see these they could see them almost with the naked eye. Or,
I could see them. This is kind of conceited sounding, but when I was in Muskoka last summer, I remember lying in the lake at night and looking up, and you could see them. You could see satellites going whoop, right across.
No way.
Yeah, because it's there's no light pollution up there, right? So it's really easy to see.
So I know. I think actually Starlink started making their satellites matte black or some sort of a finish that wasn't reflective, so they were not going to interfere as much or something like that. Sure. But I think about that, and if they're there, what's to say that somebody can't just shoot something terrestrial based, I don't know, a laser or something like that to take out your data center?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Right? Yeah. It seems actually pretty easy if it's just floating above potentially hostile territory and they just mess with you, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. There's that piece of it too that kind of bothers me. That's yeah, we could do this.
You wonder if again, going back to my redundancy thing where you might have an on-Earth data center too.
Yeah.
The whole concept behind a lot of Microsoft Azure and AWS and what they do is your data lives in data center one. If that data center goes down, it's geographically redundant. So it's in the same national jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And it goes to a backup center that's already running, right? So we had this in Canada. We had Toronto, we had Quebec.
Yeah.
And then in the United States, there's a bajillion of them. So that made sense. So maybe you have something that's okay, you have your data in a space data center. Space data centers rules are defined by U.S. national law,
right?
On cybersecurity. That gets hit by a rogue asteroid, or I don't know, by Dr. Evil's laser. And then has automatic backups that you've figured out as a company with AWS or with Azure on land. Maybe. You know what I mean? Maybe it's more continuity. You're talking about business continuity. And I think you're continuity planning for a terrestrial.
Yeah. Just
backup.
Speaking as a former CTO.
Oh, here we go.
Person that's
here we go.
The more complicated it is, the tougher it is for us to keep it going, right? We don't want to introduce complexity into anything we do, because when it breaks, it's oh, great. Now how do we unspin this, right? So a lot of times with Azure, it's pretty nice. It's just it's transparent to you, the redundancy. So I feel with the space thing, I think I think it's got to be replicated to another space-based data center, satellite, whatever. And it's just completely transparent to me, because I don't want to have to figure out, okay, where's the copy of the data, and then going back to the data sovereignty thing. Okay. So then, oh yeah, we have some of the data is in space. That's primary. But then oh yeah, we also have a data center somewhere in the US or somewhere in Europe.
Yeah. It's
all of a sudden it's you're how do you check the box again? Yeah. So I feel in my mind, the best case scenario is we're either going to space or we're not.
Remember FedRAMP? They think there's like a space ramp. You know, what about like the moon?
Yeah,
like we're already up there. I don't know, like how much further is it to? It's pretty far, but like if we get to the moon's also cold.
I gotta think the latency.
Moon's like the Arctic.
Isn't the latency way longer though? If you're like low Earth orbit is 40 to 50 mil.
What if we had a really long fiber optic cable? I don't know. Anyway, and it's an interesting idea. Like I do think it's kind of cool, but I agree.
Isn't the Earth rotating? Like if you had a cable, like is it?
Yeah, no, it's a joke.
You just spinning yourself up.
It's a joke, bro. It's like a yo-yo at that point.
Earth-sized yo-yo. All right. So as you know, we're Startup Different. We focus on startups and tech and like what. So I want to come up with some takeaways for people listening to this episode. Like, what do you do about this? If you're an entrepreneur, startup founder, and you're thinking about this sort of stuff, what is our Chris and Dave's Startup Different best practices on space-based data centers? So do you want me to put some out there and you can just shoot holes in these? Because you might hate them.
I'm already pissed.
All right. So for me, I'd be like, screw it. Don't even care about it right now. Okay. Yeah. It's too far off.
No, it's really nascent. I wouldn't do it either.
I'm just going to
I don't want the first hover car.
Yeah. I don't want to be the first one in on this.
You figure it out. Let me know.
Yeah, exactly. I want to be able to go into those deals and have them just check the box.
I agree.
Okay.
Yep.
The energy efficiency play though is interesting. So if all of a sudden it was financially, like we were spending more than $1 million a year in data center stuff. Mm-hmm. And if all of a sudden I can say, hey, I can reduce the cost by 40%, I'm actually kind of interested because that would have been many hundreds of thousands of dollars. Mm-hmm. So I think you do want to keep an eye on the efficiency play and that sort of stuff. The thing I would really like to my third point on this for startup entrepreneurs is this data sovereignty piece. I think is just too messy at this point. I think the laws and the the conventions around data sovereignty in space need to be sorted out before I'd be jumping on this. So those are the kind of like the three things I'd be doing. For now, I'm just staying on planet Earth. I'm watching for cost savings, things like that'll start to pique my interest. And the third thing too is I'm just going to need that sovereignty piece to be sort of, standardized or something like that. Do you have anything to add? Or what
my last point would be this gives you the idea how desperate we are to find a solution to this problem. Yeah. Like there's tremendous opportunity here.
Right.
That we're so desperate we're going to go to space. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it actually makes sense for us to put all this shit on a rocket and send it into space, presumably build it up there. Like, I don't even know. Figure this all out. Like if you can come up with a better way to build or cool data centers, you will be outrageously wealthy. You know what I mean?
Make interesting point. Like how long did it take them to build the International Space Station, and how much did that cost? Now, I guess the
tech was older though too, right? They built it.
Well, and I guess the difference too is you're actually trying to create like a habitat up there that humans can live in, whereas
you don't need to do that for a day. It's basically like an open room. You know what I mean?
I'm assuming satellites are essentially like a computer, but
they're so delicate. Do you ever see them building satellites? And they're all the humans are like fully like in hazmat suits. There can't be any dust in the room. Like it's so hard to do.
I figure they're getting better at this though, because the cost to launch into space has gone down by 90%. Like there's some interesting things.
But hang on. Yes, that's true. But I think like the cost of building data centers is also astronomical. Like you're in a market where everything costs $100 billion or like $50 billion. Yeah. So it's like there's opportunity there. Even a marginal gain at cooling data centers. If you could make data centers, what did it require? Like 40% of the energy? Yeah. Maybe just make it a 35%. Like, can you make a 5% gain on the cooling? You'll be rich.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should
get on this.
Maybe there are other ways.
Graham, what do you know about data centers?
Loves them. Love them. Yeah, cool. All right, so that's kind of all I had in my prep notes for
space data
episode.
Centers.
So are you pro or con then?
I'm still pro. I still think it's a problem, but I don't think I agree though. I don't want to be the first person to do this for lots of all the reasons we described today. So.
Yeah, it'd be cool though.
It'd be kind of
really cool. Yeah, our systems go. We always used to joke like our phones and stuff like that.
Going to space.
It's going to space.
Yeah.
Now we'd be like, like
it's legitimately
going to space, and it's like being stored in space.
Yeah,
so
cool.
Yeah, pretty cool. Anyway. Awesome. Good episode.
All right, see you next week, folks.
Hey. Start it up. Let's get it rolling. Big ideas, money folding, hustle smart, dream so wide. turn that grind into a joyride. Ha!